Senior writer, Sports Illustrated. Our friend Chris Mannix joins us now live. So let's talk about the LeBron thing. He had a Knicks towel draped over his shoulder, which I thought was so LeBron. It was funny. Your takeaway is consider trading him, and give me a big why here. Why would you consider that?
Well, Colin, all the things you said about, the positives of the Lakers are true. LeBron is playing great. Anthony Davis is playing great. Austin Reeves is on a good stretch right now. And look, the Lakers over the last couple of games have played some of the best basketball they've played all season. In spite of that, they are in 9th place in the Western Conference, the most competitive Western Conference that we've seen maybe ever, certainly in the last couple of decades. So even with these guys playing at this level, they are a play-in team at the moment. So look, I don't believe that LeBron is going to be traded. Rich Paul came out and said last week, LeBron is not asking for a trade and he's not going to be traded. And if you know the influence that Rich Paul has in that Lakers organization, you can take that effectively as gospel. My position is that if you're going into this trade deadline and you can't find a deal that makes you significantly better, you have to at least explore the possibility of a deal that might bring back a good young player in, say, Jonathan Kuminga, 3 first-round draft picks in a deal that could be had with the New York Knicks, or some creative deals with the Philadelphia 76ers. I think it is important for the Lakers to at least consider these options.
So I watched them and the Clippers hammer the Celtics. You know Boston well. They had their starters really flat. What am I supposed to do with a team that at home can get rolled? Is it coaching? It's not considered one of the top 4 or 5 coaches. What do you make of Boston at home getting rolled by both LA teams?
Yeah, the Laker game, weird game, right? Like they saw LeBron, they saw AD out, and they came out flat, whereas every person the Lakers put on the floor played brilliantly, from Austin Reeves to D'Angelo Russell. Everybody played good basketball in that game. The Clipper game, I think, was more concerning. Yes, Kristaps Porzingis was not playing in that game for the Celtics, and he's instrumental to their success and what they do, especially offensively. But the Clippers, I think, exposed some things. The lack of depth that the Celtics have. They're really 6 deep, and sometimes they go 7, maybe 8. And the lack of athleticism, especially with guys that are coming off the bench. You can expand it even further, Colin. You go back a couple of weeks, the other loss the Celtics had on their home floor was against Denver. And so if you're talking about a team that is looking to win a championship, Denver, the LA Clippers, these are the 2 teams that the Celtics are going to have to go through. So I think they have more than enough firepower to get through the Eastern Conference. I think their top 6 is legit. But when they get to a final series, what I learned from the Nuggets game and certainly from the Clippers game is that they may need to be proactive going into Thursday to add a reliable 7th, 8th man to this rotation.
So I want to talk about Joel Embiid's injury. So J-Mac is like, this is outrageous. He shouldn't be forced to play. And my take is the reason the NBA came out with this, you got to play 79% of your games or you won't get your bonuses, is because too many stars were taking off big Saturday and Friday games. It's not good for the fans. It's a turnoff. Whenever I see Embiid, Jokic, Giannis not playing, I mean, I've literally made decisions as a viewer. I'm not even going to the game. I'm not going to watch the game. What's the point? So where do you land on players' outrage that he felt like he was forced to play?
I mean, nobody's forced to play. And I think the team, needs to take a bigger role when guys are actually hurt. They shouldn't let guys go out there when they have injuries that could potentially get worse. All that being said, I don't have the same level of outrage that some do at this 65 game threshold. I mean, missing 20% of the season should probably take you out of consideration for the top level awards. Now, I personally, as an awards voter, usually make 60 games the threshold. If a guy's playing in the 50s, he's going to have an incredible season for me to consider him for all NBA, for MVP, for any of the top awards voting. But I don't consider 65 to be this outrageous number. Yes, this year it's been front and center because Joel Embiid has kind of forced himself out there. And now you have Tyrese Halliburton, who missed a chunk of the season with that hamstring injury, and he could be ineligible for postseason awards because he might come in just under that 65-inch game threshold. These were all problems that the NBA was going to face, but I personally don't have a problem with creating this number as the threshold for award voting.
I got to ask you, it's so funny. The other night I went out and I sat down at a place and I was watching an NBA game and I looked to my right and it was Lawrence Frank of the Clippers. We sat there and talked for an hour and I said, man, did I miss on the James Harden deal? I didn't like it at all. And then over the last 8 or 9 games, I've watched you and your offense, there's so much more fluidity. The ball moves better. And I'm like, Terrence Mann, now Westbrook's off the bench. Are the Clippers a championship level? I mean, I got to be honest with you. They took it to the Celtics. I just missed on it.
Yeah.
How do you view them right now?
I missed on the James Harden deal as well. I thought Harden would come in and I thought he'd be effective, but I thought he'd be a net negative defensively. I thought his presence would eventually lead to the Clippers needing to part ways with Russell Westbrook because him being taken out of the rotation, taking on a reduced role. I thought that was going to be problematic. None of those things have come to fruition. They had a rough stretch at the very beginning as they tried to incorporate James Harden, but they have been lights out since. And that's a credit to both the guys that I mentioned. One, James Harden, as he did in Philadelphia, he has been facilitator, first and foremost, with that group. Russell Westbrook did not sulk, did not throw a fit. He went out and accepted that sixth man role. And even though there's been some bumpy moments for Westbrook over the last couple of months, he has largely excelled in that role off the bench. The fact that these guys who have been pretty obstinate to change for most of their careers, guys that have been like, I'm me, I'm going to do me, and that's kind of the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
They have adapted beautifully in this role for the Clippers. I think that's a big reason why LA is where they are.
All right, Doc Rivers gets the Bucks job. And listen, I think the team is a bit flawed. They have a great interior player and a great exterior player, perimeter player. And I do think they needed the shot making of Dame. They don't necessarily defend the wing at all. They're a bit old. Dame didn't make them younger. They're not as good defensively. I like them. I think they could make a move. I think they're exactly what I thought they would be with Dame. More explosive in the perimeter. Giannis is a star. Doc hasn't gotten off to a great start, but he just unpacked his bags about an hour ago. What do you make of the Doc joining the Bucks? A lot of people don't like it. He's always worked well with veterans. You covered him with Boston with all the old stars. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I understood the move because if nothing else, Doc Rivers is pretty good in a locker room with star players. He's had some bumps along the way. The end in LA with Chris Paul wasn't great. The end in Philly with James Harden wasn't great. But to your point, he won a championship with 3 pretty big personalities in Boston, 4 really, if you include what Rajon Rondo was at that point. So he knows how to manage a locker room. The key for Milwaukee, though, Colin, is can they get their defense just serviceable? It doesn't need to be, and it can't be, a top 5 defense. It's not going to be that with Damian Lillard in the lineup. But if they can get it inside the top 15 to like 11, 12, 13th in defensive efficiency, they're going to be able to pull out big games. They're not, in my opinion, they're not going to be able to do that with the roster they currently have. That's why John Horst and that front office is among the most aggressive over the last 24, 48 hours to try to get help on that perimeter. They are in the mix for a guy like DeJounte Murray. They are in the mix for Dorian Finney-Smith in Brooklyn, for Royce O'Neal in Brooklyn. They are trying to get their hands on some kind of perimeter defender because they are so good at the rim with Brook Lopez and Giannis Antetokounmpo. They just need some line of defense on the perimeter that's better than Lillard, Chris Middleton, Malik Beasley. If they can get one of those guys, that defense, I think, will be shored up enough to make them a contender.
Hey, by the way, I want to circle back to Embiid. So I thought he was the closest thing I've ever seen to Shaq. A little better from the perimeter, but I mean, he just, the ability to put it on the floor, overpower people, has a little bit of a finesse game. There's a lot of things here. If Embiid never gets to a finals, post-injury, he's an all-star player, but this sort of, the knock is he can't win a second playoff series. What is his legacy? Is he an all-time 30 player? I don't see it, but he's got a lot of fans What do you make if he never returns to his level or never gets to a final? What is he historically?
Yeah, it's a good question because the team with Ben Simmons should have beaten that Atlanta Hawks team a few years ago. The team last year, up 3-2 at home, should have beaten the Boston Celtics. Now, the blame pie is big on all of those. Ben Simmons gets some. Harden, Doc Rivers gets some. But Joel Embiid, if you look at some of these performances, especially down the stretch in Game 6 last year, in Game 7 where the Sixers laid an egg, he has played a big part in their demise. So, I can't make a list right now, but I wouldn't put him in as a top 30 player, despite all the accolades and all the individual success. At least get your team into a conference finals when you have a team around you that's capable of getting there.
Yeah, I mean, Shaq's got titles, and Akeem's got titles, and Russell has titles, and Wilt has titles, and Kareem has titles. So if you're, he kind of, now he's more offensively gifted, but there's sort of a Bob Lanier kind of feel like we all know he's great. And they don't have games that match. But I grew up with Bob Lanier, and I was like, he was always a great center. But if you don't give me a trophy, you're just a really talented guy who played around guys who got titles. So I do think it really matters for all-time bigs. Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated. As always, buddy, great seeing you. Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.